Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. As Ryan said, my name is Wendy Hurlbert. I'm the President and CEO of Life Sciences BC. Welcome to our showcase series focusing on Kelowna today, and thank you all for joining us. As I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining this event from within the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And I'd also like to acknowledge that others are joining us from across traditional and unceded Indigenous territories from across the province and the country. We're excited to be here, as I've been saying, seems for 18 months to host this event virtually. Over the past 18 months, Life Science BC and our community have fortunately embraced virtual events, and we're grateful that we can still continue to discuss and draw attention to the extraordinary work being done in the life sciences sector in BC. Our showcase series is one that we've been running for a number of years, where we have stops in Kelowna, Prince George, Surrey, and Victoria. Of course, we used to do those in person, and we look forward to returning to doing them in person. But one of the advantages of it being virtual is we have the opportunity to showcase some amazing research and innovation that's happening in Kelowna and the other regions to people that are not physically in Kelowna. So I hope you enjoy this snapshot today of seeing what is happening. So for those of you that do not know, Life Sciences BC is a not-for-profit society. Our members consist of academic and research institutions, local and global companies operating in the life sciences space, for example, digital health, med tech, med devices, diagnostics, therapeutics, and those companies that specifically provide support and services to the broad life sciences ecosystem. We're funded through membership and the generous contributions of our sponsors and partners. This event was made possible by the support of our event partner, Michael Smith Health Research BC, and our speaker partners, Clinical Trials BC and the University of British Columbia Okanagan campus. Thank you for your investment in Life Sciences BC and the life sciences ecosystem. It's invaluable, and we're very grateful for your support. At each event, we also like to introduce our newest members to the community. Today, we'd like to welcome BioBoosts and SynBio Consulting, the Institute of Health Economics, and PicoQuant North America. Welcome to the LSBC family. We're always welcoming new members, so please reach out to any of us at LSBC or go to our website, lifesciencesbc.ca, for information. We're very excited about today's event. This event will look at the cutting edge research and development being done in Kelowna. So with that, I'm going to start the program and introduce Dr. Chinetta Jones to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm really delighted. Good to be here. Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to be here on behalf of a newly consolidated organization, Michael Smith Health Research BC, jointly founded by Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research and the BC Academic Health Science Network. Our offices are located on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and it's with respect and humility that we acknowledge that our work extends across many Indigenous lands and territories across British Columbia. As a newly consolidated organization, Michael Smith Health Research BC is looking forward to continuing our work with communities and partners to strengthen research capacity across the province, to support evidence-informed decision-making in healthcare, to increase the competitiveness of our life sciences sector, and to maximize the social and economic benefits of health research in BC. And on that note, we want to express our deep thanks to Life Sciences BC for organizing a fantastic event that highlights the vibrant research and life sciences in Kelowna. I've had the pleasure of participating in a few of these events now, and I'm so impressed with the breadth of life sciences research across the province, including the Okanagan region. As BC's health research agency, we recognize the importance of fostering health research capacity in all regions of BC to advance research relevant to all communities and to leverage the unique strengths of each region to ultimately benefit the province as a whole. So it's essential that we support research that is important to local communities, and that we support local researchers, and that we work in partnership to strengthen local health research capacity in every region across the province. Since 2005, Health Research BC has given nearly $13 million through 68 awards to local researchers based at UBCO, Interior Health, and Thompson Rivers University. Over the last 5 years, the Interior had a funding success rate for Michael Smith Awards that were higher than our overall average funding success rate for all regions. And we found that this success has been driven by exceptional applicants from the Interior to our scholar and research training programs. We also actively support patient engagement and research through the BC Support Unit Interior Center in Kelowna. But we know we can do more. We want to increase the regional diversity of our funding programs and to fund more researchers in BC's interior regions. So we've consulted with regional colleagues and partners to implement process changes to our scholar and research training programs intended to improve the success of regional applicants. And we are now accepting applications for these programs. We encourage you to see our website at healthresearchbc.ca for guidelines for the applications. Now, it's my extreme pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Health Research BC's recently awarded scholar, Dr. Christine Voss. Christine is an assistant professor in the Department of Pediatrics at UBCO. She joined UBC as a postdoctoral fellow in 2011 before joining the Children's Heart Center at BC Children's Hospital and UBC's Department of Pediatrics in 2015. In 2019, she relocated to Kelowna to join the new UBC Faculty of Medicine Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Management. Christine received the Michael Smith Health Research BC Scholar Award in partnership with the Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Management and Interior Health. And I believe Christine's going to tell us today about her research on physical activity and the clinical management of chronic diseases in children who reside in rural and remote communities in BC's interior. Over to you, Christine.
Good morning, everybody. Just checking my screen is working. Hearing no object. Great, thank you. Okay, well, it's my great pleasure to be here today and to share a little bit about my program of research. I'll begin by sharing with you that it is currently estimated that approximately 30% of children and youth in Canada live with a chronic condition. Now, what's a chronic condition? There's various definitions out there, but they tend to center around having a prolonged presence of the illness in the life. And while there's many chronic conditions affecting children, the two conditions that I am currently most interested in these populations that I'm working with are children with type 1 diabetes and children with congenital heart disease. So type 1 diabetes is a condition affecting metabolism, so an inability to regulate blood sugar levels effectively, and it requires currently lifelong treatment with insulin. So children with type 1 diabetes have to medicate with insulin for the rest of their lives as it currently stands. So that's one of the chronic conditions that I currently address. And then the other one is congenital heart disease. So congenital heart disease refers to structural abnormalities affecting the heart and the big vessels around the heart. And these are usually present at birth, and they are quite common. So approximately 1 in 100 births will have some form of a congenital heart disease. The range of disease is huge. So it can be minor, what you may have heard as holes in the heart that are so small, they're not even requiring intervention. And then it can range to conditions that are so complex, they require multiple open heart surgeries during childhood. So the range is vast. Both of these groups of children have in common that they need to see clinical care providers regularly, and they both require lifelong follow-up. So they will need to continue to seek out specialist services for the rest of their life to manage their condition and to manage or monitor for potential side effects that stem from living with the condition. Now, today I'll talk about physical activity. So before I continue talking more about that, I want to take a brief moment to explain what I mean and what most physical activity researchers mean when we use this term. So the technical definition is physical activity is any bodily movement produced by our muscles that requires energy expenditure. And it's quite important distinction to make between physical activity and exercise. Oftentimes, particularly in clinical settings, doctors will talk about, you need to exercise. And what the patient then hears is, I need to go to the gym. And so instantly, there's a disconnect between what we know is required to achieve health benefits, which is physical activity. So things like going for a brisk walk, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, versus the purposeful, sort of high intensity sustained exercise, which of course also brings health benefits. But it's not the primary goal in a public health context. Now, what do we know about physical activity in children? Well, apart from it being a normal part of a child's life, there's a whole laundry list of things that we know are improved when children are adequately active. So bone health, cardiometabolic health, fitness, weight status. There's also strong evidence linking physical activity to better cognition and school performance. And then, of course, there's a range of mental health benefits. In children with type 1 diabetes, in addition to that long list on the left there, children with type 1 diabetes may also benefit from better glycemic control. So this is the blood glucose level, so the blood sugar levels, the way they're able to regulate their blood sugar levels may be improved if they regularly engage in physical activity. So there's a direct benefit to the clinical management of their condition. In congenital heart disease, we know that kids who are physically active already in the current state already see improved vascular health indices. So we've done a study out of BC Children's Hospital where we looked at kids' physical activity levels and measured with echocardiography some of the vessels around the heart. And we were able to see that the vessels are healthier in those who are more active. So that has good prognostic value for the future. So what's the problem though? We know that kids in general in Canada are not active enough. The latest population data tells us that about 1 in 3 children might be achieving physical activity public health guidelines. And if you're unfamiliar with what those are, we currently recommend that children and youth under the age of 19 achieve at least 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per day. So moderate can include anything starting with brisk walking all the way up to those intense sport and exercises that I previously alluded to. And we also know that in kids with chronic conditions, the physical activity levels tend to be even lower. So there's a range of complex things colliding. So already we know they're typical children, they go to school, they're exposed to all the other reasons that make children less active. We live in a world where we rely on motorized transport. There's a lot of screen time. And then, of course, there's societal and cultural pressures around, being active or not. So, but in addition, there's real or perceived safety concerns for some of these individuals. So the vast majority of kids with congenital heart disease and diabetes can safely participate in exercise, even exercise, and especially physical activity. So this moderate walking that I just talked about, but even exercise, most of them can engage safely. But there's still a lot of confusion. There's confusion among parents, there's confusion among other members in society, teachers, and so on as to what these children can and can't do safely. And that tends to lead to hypervigilance. So, kids may end up being less active, even less active than their typically developing peers. So my research aims to get to a point in a few years' time where we can say children with diabetes and congenital heart disease in the interior are physically active. Like that's really my pie in the sky. And there's over the next 5 years, with the generous support from the Michael Smith Health Research BC organization. I've received funding for the next 5 years to do work in this area. And step one, really, I appreciate this is a bit of a mouthful, but step one for me as a scientist is to identify all the things that determine these kids' physical activity levels. So looking at personal, sociocultural, environmental, and clinical determinants of physical activity. Step two then would be to partner with patients and families to think about ways that could resemble some kind of an intervention. So what is it that they want? What is it that they need that would help them to be more active? And at this moment in time, we don't know what that is. It could be better access to sports programs. It could be better conversations with their physicians and care providers. It could be individual counseling. We don't know. The beauty of this project is that I am really trying to keep an open mind and partnering with the kids and the families to really work it out with them. And then the final step will be to, develop the program and do the evaluation like we scientists like to do. How do we do this? Well, I work closely with Interior Health and BC Children's Hospital. So BC Children's Hospital is the only pediatric cardiology provider for BC. So there are traveling clinics. So cardiologists do come to the interior several times a year to provide some of the outpatient services in the interior. And then the pediatric diabetes services are actually offered through Interior Health. So I partner with both organizations. And then there's a mix of things happening. We'll look at charts, we'll engage with the physicians who are treating these children, and of course, we're engaging with the patients' families themselves. I'm conscious of time here. I have a big slide here, all the different methods that I use in my lab, but we're doing things like using questionnaires, we're using wearable devices to objectively measure physical activity. I use GIS to look at geography, the environments where they live. And that's my last point. I want to send you away with the added complexity of doing all this work in the interior. As I'm sure you know, it's a large geographic area with large parts of the population being spread out and being in sparsely populated areas. So that creates challenges for us with regards to how do we engage with them for research? How do they access clinical services? And then I just put BC Children's Hospital on here for context, how much further that is away. So, and I think that's my time up. Thank you so much for listening. I want to acknowledge my collaborators, trainees, and funders, of course, Interior Health, Health Research BC, and the Center for Chronic Disease Prevention Management. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Voss. That was very interesting and a topic very close to my heart as a mother of 3 kids. So super, super interesting. I'd now like to invite Alison Orth, the Unit Director for Clinical Trials BC, which is part of Michael Smith Health Research BC, to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Wendy. Hi, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today and really excited to be part of showcasing all the fantastic research and innovation happening in interior British Columbia. The showcase series is always something I look forward to. Clinical Trials BC, as Shanetta had mentioned, we're part of Michael Smith Health Research BC, but really what we do within our group is to support clinical trial investigators, sites, and the institutions to ensure a world-class destination for clinical trials in BC. We focus on infrastructure and capacity building with a collaborative approach. We enable clinical trial excellence in the province of British Columbia. And we work closely actually with the Interior Health Clinical Research Department and BC Cancer Interior. Some of the programs that we provide to support their infrastructure is the provision of a clinical trial management system to help manage clinical trials. We provide education and specialized training, especially focusing on regulatory requirements for clinical trials, and also Reach BC, which is a platform to connect researchers with patients in the public and patient partners to collaborate on research studies, health research studies. So thank you for including us here today. And it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Brent Parker. And Brent manages the day-to-day operations of the Kelowna Endoscopy Research Group under the direction of clinicians involved in this research program. He has over a decade of experience managing research and evaluation programs in the health sector. I was very interested to learn that in addition to a law degree, he has graduate degrees in public health systems and analytics. He also practices law at the law firm of Dolden, Wallace, and Bolick. He enjoys combining those interests in law and healthcare and regularly advises on healthcare-related regulatory and legal matters. Brent is also involved with the local Research Ethics Board and Hospital Ethics Committee. He mentors undergraduate and medical students on research projects. And he tells me when he's not at the office, you'll find him up at the ski hill, probably lost in the trees, he says. So Brent is here to talk to you about the research program, and I'm especially interested in hearing about the randomized controlled clinical trial they've been working on. Over to you, Brent.
Thank you. Just be sharing my screen here. Let me know if there's any challenges viewing it. Yes, I am certainly excited about the ski hill opening here over the next couple of days at Big White. And so I can say truthfully, the only place I'd rather be right now than here is up on the hill. I'm excited to talk a little bit today about some of the research that I'm involved in with a great group of clinicians and students. So our research focuses on colonoscopy and other endoscopy type procedures to examine and treat conditions of the digestive tract. I work with a great team of clinicians. The work is led by Dr. Adrian Back, and we work very closely with medical students, both locally and across the province. We're really fortunate to have their involvement. I'll be talking in a minute about a chart review that we did, which involved over 2,000 patients. And as you can imagine, this work just isn't possible without support from medical students and engaged individuals like that. And so it's a great opportunity not only to be involved in helping train and mentor the next generation of physicians and scientists, but we also do really rely on their support and help as well too. So our research program, our research initiatives, they focus primarily on identifying opportunities to improve upon the performance of these GI-related procedures. As you can imagine, a procedure like a colonoscopy, the part of it can involve trying to diagnose or identify or sample tissues that might be abnormal. The better that clinicians can be at doing that, the more likely they're going to be able to detect abnormal tissues and hopefully prevent cancers. Similarly, as some of you may know, these procedures are not all that comfortable quite often. And in some settings, they're being performed in very ill patients, in individuals with many complications, and they can be relatively high risk procedures in certain settings. And so another kind of aim of our research is to identify opportunities to improve upon the comfort as well as the safety of these procedures as well too. So we have several studies on the go right now. I only have a minute or two to talk about just a couple of studies. But if you have any other questions more generally, please feel free to reach me afterwards or through the questions. My email is on the bottom right-hand corner of the slide. So the first study that I want to talk about this morning is the study that we have recently completed related to ERCP. And so ERCP is a procedure that's used to diagnose and treat conditions of the biliary or pancreatic ducts. And it uses scopes as well as instrumentation attached to the scopes and X-ray technology to navigate through these organ systems. So for example, this procedure can be used to diagnose or manage pancreatic cancers as well as gallstones as an example of some of the uses for it. The specific study that we recently completed looked at a practice change from performing this procedure under procedural sedation to general anesthesia. So several years ago in 2017, after consultation with the clinicians and local hospital administration, it was decided to transition from procedural sedation to general anesthesia. The reason was it was identified that there may be opportunity to improve upon care and reduce undesirable outcomes. So with procedural sedation, a patient isn't necessarily completely immobilized, and they might be moving around during the procedure slightly. This can cause challenges to the endoscopist. This can lead to bumping up against the various ducts, which can cause bruising, inflammation, as well as rarely a perforation or puncture of those ducts. And so that is a surgical emergency when that happens, and it can result in death. And so the thought was, with greater control as afforded by anesthesia, there may be less of these critical incidents, less side effects related to this procedure. So what we did is we looked at about 2,000 patient records before and after the change, and we noted quite a significant difference in outcomes. So we saw a significant reduction in serious patient safety events. We also saw lower rates of pancreatitis and less procedures failing. And so this was quite a significant outcome. Still to this day, the standard across Canada is for the procedure to be done under sedation. However, at this time, we're in the process of sharing our results to institutions across Canada, to hospitals across Canada and North America. We're presenting our results hopefully this upcoming year at several conferences as well too. And currently now the practice at KGH is and will remain to have this procedure done under general anesthesia. Another study that we currently have on the go is a randomized controlled trial. And this is a study that we have that is looking at two different approaches or techniques to colonoscopy. In brief, traditionally, the colon has been inflated with air prior to and during a colonoscopy to allow the scope to navigate through the colon. This newer approach looks at using water instead of air. And it's thought to, some of the other studies that have come out on this technique are thought to be associated with improved patient comfort, as well as possibly an ability to detect more of certain types of abnormal tissues. And so this study is currently recruiting patients. We have about 100 of the 200 or so planned procedures completed. And we're randomizing individuals to receive either the colonoscopy, it's a screening colonoscopy, through the traditional method or through this newer method, water exchange. And we're looking at a number of outcomes, those again related to the ability to detect abnormal tissues as well as patient comfort. This is being done without sedation. Part of the work that we do, in addition to, as I mentioned in the previous slide, using more sedation or anesthesia, here we're looking at less as part of our overall goal. It is to look at optimizing and using the limited resources that we have to the best and most appropriate uses. And so in this setting, perhaps not for everyone in the future, but there may be opportunities for many people down the road to receive a colonoscopy without sedation if it provides little discomfort. And so the implications of this study and related work of this nature are related to improving patient comfort, helping screening programs further optimize colon cancer screening. This is beyond just the level of Kelowna General Hospital, but provincially and beyond, and optimizing how resources like anesthesia, like sedation, are used in hospitals. And so those are just two studies that we have on the go, but it's been exciting to be involved in this work over the last few years. We have definitely, I think, become a bit of a hub of research in this area. And we're excited over the next several years to look at opportunities to continue to develop excellence and innovation in this area. And the work that we've completed so far has not been possible without, but for the support of UBC, KGH. The KGH Foundation has provided some fantastic support, as well as supports from Interior Health as well too. So we're excited to see how this work progresses over the next several years, and the individuals and organizations that we can partner with on this work. Please feel free to let me know if you have any questions. I'm keeping an eye on the chat box, but absent that, I will conclude my presentation.
Thank you very much, Brent. Very interesting. Hope you make it on the ski hill sometime soon.
Thank you.
I would now like to introduce our next speaker, Natasha Haskey. She's a registered dietitian, a PhD candidate at the UBC Okanagan campus. Natasha is one of 2 graduate mentors that supports the multidisciplinary undergraduate research projects in health program called MURPH. She's a doctoral candidate researching the link between diet, specifically dietary fat, inflammation, and the intestinal microbiota and its implications on ulcerative colitis at UBCO. Having been fortunate to have strong mentorship throughout her own career, she decided to apply to the MURPH program so that she could give back to undergraduate students. Natasha has been a practicing dietitian for over 20 years and has co-authored the textbook called Gut Microbiota, Interactive Effects on Nutrition and Health. Natasha, the virtual floor is yours.
Okay, so thank you so much to Life Sciences BC for allowing my team and I to share a little bit about the multidisciplinary undergraduate research projects and health program. And I'm going to refer to it as MURPH from this point on. As was mentioned, I'm one of the graduate mentors involved in this program, and I've basically been involved in this program since its inception. So just to tell you a little bit about what MURPH is that MURPH really stemmed from an idea put forth by a professor in the Materials Management Research Institute, Dr. Takafoli. And it was actually through his idea, he saw an opportunity to develop a multidisciplinary undergraduate research program. And at the time, there was some funds at UBCO that were promoting programs that would promote undergraduate research experiences. And he was actually successful in getting some funding. So we started the MURPH program from there. So the first 2 years of our program were funded through this peer program, and the UBCO campus saw this, our program so far, as something that was very promising and interesting. So we're in our 3rd year now, and our funds are coming from the provost office. So what our program really aims to do is to foster multidisciplinary research and collaboration across campus, in particular for our undergraduate students. And we wanted to develop these collaborations also not only for the undergraduate students, but to begin some of these collaborations across discipline for our faculty members. And basically, hopefully our research would impact the community as a whole. And we certainly have, in the past couple of years, partnered with organizations like Interior Health and some non-for-profit organizations. So just a little bit about our structure. We do have a management team, which again is very interprofessional. We've got Dr. Bator from the School of Nursing, Dr. Eves from Health Sciences and Exercise Sciences, Dr. Miller from Psychology, and Dr. Milani Forsman and Takafoli, who are from our School of Engineering. And as mentioned, I am one of 2 graduate mentors. My colleague Megan and I act as administrators for the MURPH program. So our role really is sort of the go-between our faculty and our management team. We mentor our students. We also provide we execute workshops for our students. And of course, I'm always looking for partnerships and opportunities. So our program runs over the fall and winter terms, and in spring we generally put out a call for research proposal to our faculty with the key component that our projects must be cross-disciplinary. And basically what happens is from there, our management team reviews these proposals, And for example, this year we were able to fund 10 projects with the funding that we have. From there, once the projects are selected, we put a call out to the students in various departments, and they apply to the MURPH program. And then once we have these students selected, the faculty can go through these different applications and choose 2 students they would like to work with on their particular research projects. So basically the funds that we have for MURPH actually go to pay the wages for our 2 undergraduate students. So they can, it's kind of like a part-time job for them so that they can focus on some of the research. And so last year we had 15 applications. Unfortunately, we're only able to fund with 10 with the funding sources we have. And as far as students, it's become quite a competitive process. We had over 90 applications last year, and we only have the funds to fund 21 students. But as you can see, our just from the projects listed on this particular slide, many of these projects are quite cutting edge and are quite relevant to our community partners. So this year we have 17 faculty involved in the MURPH program, and I'm happy to say Dr. Komisar is part of our program this year, and Dr. Voswood is one of our alumni from last year. And these are the names of our 21 scholars this year, and I have to say these are the cream of the crop, these students, high GPAs, well-rounded resumes, and from what we heard, it was a very difficult process for the faculty to choose these scholars just due to the high quality of our applicants. And so just to give you a sense of the disciplines involved, we have students from medicine, nursing, biology, engineering, and many of these students, we're combining faculty from engineering with medicine or computer science and biology. So it creates some very interesting projects. And so, but like I mentioned, we're in our 3rd year of the program. We were able to fund 9 projects in our 1st year, and last year 5. We did run the project virtually last year, which we were quite proud of. And we had less, we went smaller just due to the concerns of running everything virtually, but we can say that things went quite successfully. So the other component of our MURPH program really is to provide some additional training to our students, and we provide that through various workshops. So in addition to providing this opportunity for undergraduate students to participate in research, we're really trying to provide extra training on how enhancing communication skills amongst these students. So our first workshop, for example, really focuses on how to train students on communicating within their team. So things like breaking down stereotypes, how to effectively communicate within a team, to moving to providing education around patient-oriented research, community-engaged research, and design thinking. So getting patients, community involved at the onset of research programs. And then our 3rd workshop really focuses on having students translate that scientific information that they're learning into plain language. So if students successfully complete their projects, attend all the workshops, and then we actually have them attend some local conferences, if they attend these, meet these 3 components of our program, they have a MURPH certificate. So we're actually quite proud of our students because they've actually gone on to be quite successful. For example, at the UBCO interprofessional conferences, we've had in the 1st year, 2 students received awards for their projects. And so this is one example of our student. The 2nd group, and then last year we had a student also win the top award at this local UBCO conference. We're proud to say we were able to run the program virtually, so it kind of shows that this program, we don't have to be on site to conduct this research, and in fact we have students attending from all over the world this year, because some of our students aren't on campus. So they're joining, we're doing blended workshops to make this work. We've had our MURPH presented at the Board of Governors at UBC. We had one of our students present, and one of our students won the Lieutenant Governor's Medal and linked his success with being a participant in the MURPH program. Also, UBC Vancouver has modeled their program in medicine, which runs over the summer after the MURPH program. And I just want to share a couple quotes on the sort of impact this has had with students. So certainly some of the quotes that students have shared with us are that working in this multidisciplinary team allows for unique solutions to complex problems, creating novel ideas, and just combining different ideas, perspectives on health issues that matter to patients. Our faculty have enjoyed the process because it's created collaborations between departments that they may have not have had before. It's provided seed funding. There's been some publications that have come out of this work. And certainly some students have gone on to be hired by faculty for the summers to continue their research projects. So I guess my last slide really is we're always open to partnership opportunities. I will put our email in the chat box. We'd love to chat with you, whether it be coming to be a guest speaker as part of the program, collaborating with some of our UBC laboratories, potentially receiving research support. And our goal ultimately is to build world-class talent. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Natasha. Really interesting to learn about the program and what you're doing at UBCO. So thank you very much. I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, Vicky Komisar, the Assistant Professor of Mechanical Engineering, UBCO as well. Dr. Komisar is an assistant professor of mechanical engineering with the School of Engineering at UBCO. She's also an associate member of UBC's Institute of Healthy Living and Chronic Disease Prevention. She completed her PhD in biomedical engineering at the University of Toronto in the Toronto Rehab Institute within the University of Health Network in 2018. Dr. Komisar's research explores how the design of built environments, assistive aids, and everyday tasks such as carrying groceries affects the risk for falls and fall-related injuries. She's especially interested in developing better strategies for injury prevention in older adults. Her research has informed building codes, product design standards, and WorkSafe BC's guidance on best practices for preventing falls in an aging workforce. So over to you, Vicky. Apologies for my tongue-tiedness. Looking forward to your presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Wendy, for the introduction. Let's just hope the screen sharing all works out. Okay, is everyone able to see this?
Yep, you are great.
Excellent. Okay. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate being invited to this event and having the chance to speak to all of you. So I'm excited to talk about some new research in fall and injury prevention and some recent successes in translating this research into guidelines for fall prevention technology use. So why are we here? Well, falls are a major public health problem. In older adults, falls cause over 80% of injury-related hospitalizations and traumatic brain injuries, and about 95% of hip fractures. Most older adults who sustain these injuries will never regain their autonomy and independence from before the fall. So with these sobering statistics in mind, my research vision, and starting here at UBC Okanagan, is to improve the evidence base on how the design and use of technologies and built environments affects fall and injury risk to guide design standards, best practices, and new products. Today, I'm going to talk about two recent and exciting lines of inquiry toward this goal. And I'll start by exploring how handrail height affects balance recovery in healthy adults, and then look at how the use of mobility aids and other held objects affects the risk for head impact and associated head injury from falls in long-term care. So to begin with, we'll talk a bit about handrail height and balance recovery. This is based on my PhD work at Toronto Rehab. And I'll just acknowledge that it was supported by an operating grant from the CIHR and scholarships from AgeWell and the Government of Ontario. And I'll give a nod to Michael Smith as well, because their funding was key to giving me capacity to actually publish the work that I'm talking about today. So handrails are common products that reduce the risk of falls on stairs or in other settings, as long as their design allows the person to reach to grasp the rail quickly and then effectively stabilize their torso. However, evidence to inform handrail height standards is quite limited because of the practical challenges of collecting data safely. So my team at Toronto Rehab wasn't too cool with this. So here are some of the tools that we actually use to explore the relationship between handrail height and balance recovery. So on the left, you can see the outside of the laboratory, and the giant cube on the top is the lab itself. It's mounted to a hydraulic motion simulator, which allows us to suddenly shake the lab and then destabilize people in a controlled way. On the right, we can see the inside of the giant cube. So here's a participant who's actually my dad, who wanted to be cross-country famous. So here we are. And he's secured to a safety harness to prevent actual falls. And he's walking beside a height adjustable handrail. So to measure grasping speed, we use 3D motion capture and an electromyography sensor on his arm to measure muscle reactions. To look at grasping effectiveness, we use 3D motion capture all around his torso to measure torso movement during balance recovery. So I'll start by walking you through our speed findings. We actually found no effect of handrail height on contact time after balance loss or after upper limb muscle onset, even after we controlled for the person's height. This really surprised us, and it suggests that contact time was not compromised by higher handrails, even though the initial distance from the person's hand to the rail was greater. We took a closer look at individual reach trajectories to understand our contact time findings. So here I have sample motion capture data from one person on the left, and then group data on the right. And we can see from the group data that as handrail height increased, vertical handrail overshoot, or the peak distance between the person's hand and the handrail, decreased. And what this tells me is that participants compensated for the greater hand-to-handrail distance by reaching more directly. Looking now at effectiveness. So here we're looking at the torso displacements in the forward and the sideways direction. And we can see that as handrail height increased, peak forward and torso angular displacement decreased. And this indicates a greater torso control advantage with rails up to about 42 inches. So for comparison, the BC building code range pre-2018 was 34 to 38 inches, so below the handrail heights that best enabled torso control. So to bring this all back together, higher handrails, surprisingly, were not problematic from a grasping speed perspective, but were advantageous from a recovery effectiveness perspective, up to about 40 to 42 inches. I'm really excited to say that this work led to WorkSafe BC raising the upper boundary on their handrail height design range in their guidance for occupational fall prevention. This work was also cited in a 2019 Australian construction code when justifying the need for greater handrail use on stairs and ramps. And I'm excited to work with these groups in the years ahead. I'll shift gears now to some cool new findings that looked at technology for injury prevention when falls occur. And this is based on my postdoctoral efforts at Simon Fraser University. This work involved partnering with 2 long-term care homes operated by the Fraser Health Authority, with support from postdoctoral awards from Michael Smith and AgeWell, and an operating grant from CIHR. So over the last, I'd say, 14 years or so, the team where I did my postdoctoral fellowship at SFU has collected over 3,400 videos of real-life falls by long-term care residents using surveillance footage. And this has allowed us to gain high-quality evidence on biomechanical risk factors for falls that would otherwise be impossible to glean from laboratory studies, especially in long-term care residents who we probably shouldn't put on robotic platforms to induce falls. So our team coded these videos using questionnaires to characterize features like whether body parts impact the ground or other environmental features, and whether residents held objects during the fall. We also combined questionnaire data with injury outcomes. So one major finding from this work was that 1 in 3 falls by long-term care residents involved head impact. And then this suggests that something might be going wrong with how well residents can use their arms to arrest falls, in the same way that you or I might stick our arms out to avoid hitting our head after descending toward the ground. So to gain a better understanding of risk factors for head impact in the complex long-term care setting, we asked 3 questions. So the first was, how often do long-term care residents hold or reach to grasp objects when they fall? Second, what kind of objects do they hold, like mobility aids or cups of water? And finally, how does holding objects affect the odds for head impact? So we were surprised to find that over 2 in 3 falls by residents involved some kind of held object. And we classified these based on whether they were weight-bearing or non-weight bearing, because they were likely to have different effects on the mechanics of the person's fall. Over 50% of falls involved holding weight-bearing objects, and this is indicated in blue. 11% were non-weight-bearing objects in gray, and then about 4% were cases where residents held both weight-bearing and non-weight-bearing objects. We also found that residents often continued to hold the objects throughout the fall, with the grasp maintained in over 50% of falls with weight-bearing objects and in over 70% with non-weight-bearing objects. We also characterized the most common held objects, and these tended to be walkers or rollators on the left here, followed by chairs or wheelchairs, and then tables or counters. Finally, we found that when residents fell while holding weight-bearing objects, the odds for head impact were reduced by 2-fold. The outcomes were best when the residents held the weight-bearing object all the way up to landing. And we also looked at individual objects and found similar results for walkers and rollators on their own compared to holding nothing. So this is really important for any clinicians who are on this call to know. In this video here, you can see an example of how a resident was able to use the walker after balance loss to slow her descent and keep her head from the ground and avoid other injuries. And I was really excited by this because there's a common school of thought that people should avoid using walkers or rollators because of some ideas that they create dependence on the mobility aid. And instead here we see that even when the aid failed to prevent falls, they still allowed people to fall more safely. This work is recent, so published in 2021, and we're disseminating among colleagues with provincial health authorities to help guide best practices for technology use for injury prevention. So I'll talk a little bit about what's next. I'm planning to continue to use the tools of biomechanics to understand how the use and design of technologies and environments and everyday tasks affects fall and injury risk. I'm currently part of a funded research cluster in aging in place at UBCO, and we currently have motion tracking, force analysis, and muscle monitoring capabilities. And I'm looking to supplement that with more exciting tools for inducing balance loss and falls to study these aspects in the laboratory. I'm also expanding relationships with local care providers, the Interior Health Authority's long-term care team, WorkSafe BC, and not indicated on the slide, but actually the leadership of the CSA's Long-Term Care Standards Committee. And this will motivate and provide a path for knowledge uptake for preventing falls and injuries in the community, in care settings, and in workplaces. I'm always looking for partners and collaborators with interest in fall and injury prevention, physical ergonomics, and assistive technologies. So if this is of interest to you from a design or research perspective, please do let me know. So that wraps things up, and I think we have just a teensy bit time left to wrap up this session. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to all of our speakers, Natasha, Vicky, Brent, and Christine, for the really interesting presentations. It's so exciting to see what's going on at UBCO, and we are thrilled to provide this venue to be able to showcase that. I want to thank very much our event partner, Michael Smith Health Research BC, for supporting the event, and for our speaker partners, Clinical Trials BC and UBCO. We always end our events with an overview of what events are coming up over the next little while. So I think Peter is about to share a slide. We do have a couple of events that may be of interest to people, which you can register through our website. Our Blake's Breakfast is on December 2nd, where we'll be focusing on neurological diseases. We have our showcase series for Prince George coming up on December 14th. In January, we have our Gardner webinar. January 21st, our Career Connect Day presented by BioTalent Canada. That again will be virtual, so hope we get lots of people coming to learn about careers in life sciences and connect with academia, research, and industry for potential career opportunities. And then in February, we will have our annual Access to Innovation Conference. It's going to be February 17th, 16th, and 17th. So hope you can join us with that. Lastly, I'd like to thank all of our supporters. We're grateful for your support, as it really enables LSBC to do the things that we do to advance and support and promote the ecosystem. Our platinum sponsors, Admare, Ferris, GSK, Janssen, Pfizer, and Roche. Our gold sponsors, Accelera, Blake's, Innovative Medicines Canada, Novartis, and Stem Cell, and our silver and bronze partners. So again, with that, thank you very much for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Stay safe out there.